Welcome to Truth in Politics, presented to you by Our Neutral Voices. We're back for the 2024 season, and we are back with a new co-host. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but we also got a special guest, a legend of Fort Wayne in the building, and we're going to introduce him in just a minute. But Miss Audrey, introduce yourself. Tell the people who you are.
Hey, Clarence. It's good to be with you. Good to be with you, John. My name's Audrey. Many of you probably saw my name on your ballot this last November when you went to vote. I ran for city council at large. I come from a 4-person family in Huntington, Indiana. I've been living in Fort Wayne the last 10 years. Now have a daughter and a husband, and a long-term faith-based community organizer and somebody who cares about Fort Wayne families and people. So glad to be here.
Glad to be here. We thank you. We thank you for joining our platform, and hopefully you will bring some edge and some information to this Truth in Politics. Now, let's get to Mr. John Dortch. I can tell you, if you know him, you know him. He's a businessman, been in the community a long time. But one thing I like about him, he's a mentor to many. And if you stop and ask him a question about business, he's going to give you some answers. Mr. Dortch, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, we all know you, but there's some people out there that's not familiar with you. Give some people a little bit of background about you, Mr. Dortch.
Well, a lot of people think I'm from Fort Wayne, and I'm not. I'm from a town in Alabama, Camden, Alabama. And I grew up there, went to college in Nashville, Tennessee. My first 2 years of employment with Internal Revenue. I left them, came to Fort Wayne, Indiana, thought I was coming to a military base, Fort Wayne. International Harvest for 3 years.
Wow.
Left International Harvest, went to Parkview Health, and spent 31 years there.
Wow.
Went through 5 promotions. Last 15 years, I was the vice president. Wanted to get out of corporate America. May 15th of 2004, I left Parkview Health and started my first company.
Yes.
And now I have 4 small businesses, and very grateful and thankful for that.
Yes. You've been in this community a long time, Mr. Deutsch, and we thank you for everything you've done. But we want to get it started, and we want to talk about a lot of things. You know, we're going into Black History Month, and this is also about politics. But we want to combine them and ask you some questions. Mr. Deutsch, the political landscape that you've seen from, let's say, from the Civil Rights era to right now, what is the drastic changes, or what is the positive changes? What changes have you seen throughout the time from just over 55 years ago to now?
Well, there have been some changes, but not as much as they should or they could be. We still have problems. We still have discrimination because of your race, your sex, your religion, your national origins, and all of those, LGBTQ, everything. We still have discrimination. We still have a ways to go. We're not in the positions that we should be in. We'll stand and saying in 2024, the first female to do this or the first minority to do this.
Yes.
That should not be going on.
Yes.
So the changes are not what they should be.
Amen, John.
Yes.
I'm so thankful. You know, I can feel that sense of gratitude for how far we've come, but also that sense of loss for how far we have not really come, and how everything that's old is new again, like Stacey Abrams says in her recent books. But I'm wondering, too, because, you know, sometimes we can feel really hopeless when we look out there and we see the changes that still need to be made on the local level as well as the state and the national level. Here we are in a presidential election year. You know, we just lost Mayor Henry's wife.
Yes.
This is probably going to be the last term that we have Mayor Henry sitting as the mayor of Fort Wayne. Lots of change potentially on the horizon, lots of opportunity for Fort Wayne to decide what it wants for its future. And I'm just kind of wondering from both of you all, you know, when we're thinking about this being our inaugural show with our audience, you know, when you think about your role in politics and in designing a social environment that reflects your values, what's like one quote or one maybe song lyric that you come back to regularly that grounds you in your purpose? I'll start, okay? Because I've been thinking about this.
All right.
So I went into the Navy right after high school, coming out of a single parent household, and I remember regularly feeling like I was going to have to make some decisions coming, you know, as the second oldest and living in a small town that kind of always had the same horizons for everybody at that point. And I remember this Pink Floyd song that kept playing in my head. You guys remember the "Wish You Were Here" song? And it was this line that said, "So you think you can trade your walk-on part in a war for a lead role in a cage?"
Wow.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
and that regularly came back to me, to not sell out, to stick to my values. There's going to be parties, there's going to be groups always trying to co-opt you and get you to think the way that they want you to think. But from your experience what it's going to take in order to see the truth through.
Right.
So what about for you all?
Right. Well, in that same vein, I would say mine is, and it's one of the things that I've learned in high school, and it's Shakespeare. To thy own self be true. And I say that because I have to be true to me in everything that I do. And I don't just mean me as the physical person, but things in my environment, things. So I have to be true to that. So everything I do has to affect and incorporate my whole surroundings. So I'm a bigger picture person. I don't look at how's it just going to affect one person or just me. But the me in the whole me is my surroundings and everything.
So to thy own self be true when you're thinking about how to make decisions that affect all of us.
Yes.
Amen. Amen to that.
I really like what both of you said, but I've always liked the Carpenters, and I've liked the song that said, "We've only just begun." And as I stated earlier, it's 2024, and it seems like we've only just begun. One of the things I've said to the mayor, I think we should be looking at either putting a female as a deputy mayor or a minority. It's time. Fort Wayne's the second largest city. So we definitely should. 4 years will be up before you can really realize it.
Right.
And I like to vote more independent in terms of the person head and their heart.
Right.
If their head's in the right place, their heart's in the right place, I can sit down and talk to them and find out where they are and know where their head is and where their heart is. So really, we've only just begun. We have a ways to go.
Yeah. And with that, Mr. Deutsch, because historically and still today, our community has been a party community. How do we break that cycle and have people to understand to vote, as you say, open-mindedly, not just for a party, but for the person that's going to do. As I was telling Audrey, we need to take our political equity back. That means we have to have it work for us. How do we get people to understand to vote for your equity and your political process to work for you?
That's a very, very good question, and it's one that bothers me and concerns me. Growing up in the Deep South, I look at the times that people rode the buses, they walked just to vote, miles just to vote. They understood what a vote meant. Today, it seems like people do not understand how important a vote is. So we have to start some way, somehow, with the various organizations. You have fraternities, you have sororities, and most certainly, you have churches. On a Sunday morning, they have a captive audience.
Right.
And they should not wait till a year before the election.
That's
should
what
be
they come.
ongoing. And
Yes.
should have churches. Many of the, cars and vans. Many of the churches do have vans. Many people will allow you to use their vans during election time. It is not happening. We're
Right.
not out voting. In some way, somehow, we have to get in people's head and have them understand, like we did down south. They have to understand what voting means and how important it is. We need it today.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And when you say that, how, because they're saying now, I hear mixed reviews, and Audrey, you can't tell me because you ran, but I hear mixed reviews of the younger generation voting. I hear some people saying that the younger generations are coming out in great numbers. Then I hear other reviews saying that they're not out in the polls. How do we get the young people to understand the value of your vote? And to understand, I do know that a lot of them don't follow history, but how can we put the historical balance in them so they could understand how valued your vote can possibly be?
Well, again, as I stated, every opportunity. I recently started the Dream Center, and what I have been doing is having some sessions with young people. We have a program now with some young men, 12 to 16 years of age. We just was approached by an elementary school here asking if we would try to get involved with them. There's a big need. A lot of people are hurting out there. A lot of young people, very talented, very bright, but no one is reaching out to them. So we have to start with the young people. And once the young people, and get them and be mentors to them and appoint them or have them to be mentors to others and grow up that way. And I believe that would help where we are now.
I was just talking to, you all would probably know the last name of Romeo, the director of the Mayor's Youth Council.
Yes.
I was talking to him at the inauguration of Mayor Henry 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it seems like we all are regularly, whether you're in the organizing world, whether you're a candidate and you're trying to get out the vote, or you're NAACP or some kind of civic organization, everybody's always scratching their head asking how are we going to get the young vote out. And here we are, 2024. Not everybody's all that excited about the options for the presidential election. But what I remember learning as an organizer, in 2016 and in 2020, both presidential years, we turned out the largest nonpartisan voter engagement that increased the level of African American voters and Latino voters by 14%.
Yes.
And what I remember learning on those doors, because that takes a lot to door-to-door conversations, is that people will look at you like a deer in the headlights and not really know why they need to change their behavior unless you make it extremely clear the opportunity that they have that year, right? So I think it's on our, nationally, young people are holding down the fort, right? Here in Fort Wayne, it's not so much the case. I think we have a lot of work to do as candidates, as parties, as organizations, to not just say, hey, get out there and vote, you need to vote. Remember, history tells us we have to vote. It's to actually start to describe things in a way that have to do with their lives and the decisions that their families are facing around the dinner table every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you make a good point. Getting them involved. A lot of them are not involved. They don't have that sense of belonging. Getting them involved and giving them some kind of assignment and let them work with whatever you give them and invite them to the various meetings. And then there's nothing wrong with a young person. A lot of boards in this city at major companies and other places always look to put a young person on the board because they should be. They have a lot of talent. I think some people are afraid to do it because they're insecure. They really are, because a lot of young people out there, they can take a computer at 9 and 10 years old or younger, and do the things they're doing. They most certainly, at 16, 18, 20, they can run countries.
True. And with that, Mr. Dortch, you mentioned agencies and churches. And in Fort Wayne, we have a void, and I don't know how we get back to the prominence of the NAACP, the prominence of the Urban League, the prominence of the Black Caucus. Where are these entities right now in our area, and to work towards to help focus on these changes, to educate and to move this thing forward?
They are not, as I stated earlier, that I've talked to the mayor about having a minority or a female as a deputy. When these boards are formed or when someone stepped down, it should be, whether it's articles of incorporation or board of directors or whatever, they should have a young person that's on that board that could move up and allow them to be involved. Then other young people will want to be involved. We don't get them involved, they're not going to do anything, and we have a bad habit of not getting them involved.
No.
So one of the things that we want to do on this show, John, and I hope you'll continue to help us, post just being here tonight, but we want to build a political community. Right. Where we actually start to have the imagination to not just react to our choices, but to actually inform what we're able to do and who we want our choices to be, right? So right now we have we're going to have a governor race in we're going to have a primary in May. We're going to have state and governor and president candidates on the ballot in November. Not everything is about the vote,
Correct.
but our vote is our first entry point into civic
Right.
life, right?
Correct.
If we can at least begin to exercise that currency,
Yes.
then we start to realize the cause and effect that happen with local board decisions, with, planning commissions, all of those things. And we know that this is the time to get involved more than ever. So I want to ask you all, because, here I am, a white female, just turned 40, it's different demographics. I came from a single parent home, but, my mom thought that the most important thing we all needed to participate in was going down to the city council and making sure sex ed didn't get on the curriculum for public school. I mean, that's the background I came out of, right? And then my grandfather was on his pro-life committee at his parish. I mean, it was like, I'm kind of an anomaly, the fact that I'm, a Democrat, somebody who cares about human rights. That never really was taught to me when I was growing up. So when you think about the moment in history or the moment in local or, student or any movement that you've been a part of, what's one of the most important moments that you felt was super powerful in your formation as people in public life?
Wow.
Because I think we need to leave with hope,
Yes.
I think we do. I grew up, my dad had a 6th grade education. It's 11 kids in the family, 7 girls, 4 boys. Every one of us are college graduates. One of the chapters in my first book, Dad said, get a skill or get an education. One of the things I grew up and around, Dad read the newspaper every living day. I still read newspaper, books, and all of that.
Right.
So that is so critical, so important. People don't read today.
No, they don't.
They do not. You can talk to them about something. They say, what are you talking about? When did that happen? I grew up with that. I cannot exist without reading a newspaper every day,
Right.
not just Fort Wayne paper. That's why I started a newspaper 5 years ago.
Right.
Literally started
Fort
in
Wayne
Right.
Ink Spot.
Yes.
Because I believe so strongly in newspaper. And we would have a meeting once a month, our board of a meeting, and we discuss and plan things. We just had a meeting. We meet the fourth Tuesday of every month, and Tuesday night we outline what we're doing for 2024. Some other things, what did we accomplish
Right.
the last year, and what do we want to accomplish this year? And we're trying to meet some of those needs, not just to talk about sports,
Right.
but we also, a lot of other things that we want to talk about. A lot of people do not realize what many blacks have done here in Fort Wayne.
True.
Black History Month is coming up. We
Yes.
talked about that Tuesday night, and I think we're going to do a lot of things different just based on that. Not just to run ads,
Right.
but to recognize some of those that were the very first that accomplished some things. They were black.
Yeah.
So we have to, and then again, people will see that. A lot of young people will see it and say that, really, I
Right.
want to be this, or I want to be that.
Yeah. And we need that. We really do need that because not only too many times, and we're going to get to this question in a minute, but too many times our history is being negated or not being taught properly. But to answer your question, Audrey, I came into political knowledge in the late 80s, early 90s. I was in high school. I graduated from high school in 91 here at Wayne. You got to understand that was the Rodney King times. That was a whole lot of things. But during my time of growing up, TV had a different feel to it. The black shows gave us political outlooks. The black shows, the Cosby shows, A Different World. We had all of these shows. A Different World and Cosby Show, they featured black colleges and everything, but they also had messages. And, A Different World was very political at times. And, they talked about issues. They talked about apartheid. They talked about racism. They
did.
So we had these foundations where we don't have these foundations. As he say, the newspaper, we had TV shows and we had inspirations. We don't have those anymore. So ours came from, at that time, it was in our face a whole lot. It was in our music because the rap music then is not the rap music now. We had Public Enemy. We had, other people talking about politics and talking about things, giving us insight and giving us knowledge. So we were a culture at that time, and we worked and we moved at that time. I don't know when the decline or the fall had come off, but it happened somewhere that, and I can say our generation is probably guilty. we didn't train up the next generation. We just took ours and packed up and moved on, and didn't look back to change or set up for the change that was coming.
Yeah, every generation has to fight for its freedom, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that we have to remember, especially when we're looking at some of the fractions that we face here within Fort Wayne, is that we may have dropped the ball.
Yes.
We may have taken our share and went home, but we have to build up the people coming behind us and our people coming alongside us to make sure that they know that this is a high stakes game. We don't just get to sit on our hands.
Right. But and not only that, Mr. Dortch, because Audrey and I, when we were meeting at another time, we were talking, we as a culture only vote for the presidential election, mostly.
That's true.
We don't go for the small elections. And if we are negligent, we lose things in the smaller races. Because think about it. Our school boards, there are school boards across the country that are taking books out of school, that are taking curriculums out of school, that are not teaching certain things in school. So how do we, not only globally, but how do we, what's the importance of voting your school board, your city council, your things such as that, because we don't see value in that.
We don't, and some way, somehow, it goes back to educating people, allowing them to know. One of the things I do, I want to go back to this, my newspaper. I started, when I first started the newspaper, I give out 600 free papers a month. The jail gets 50 every other week. The paper comes out every week. 50, they get 100 a month. 3 different women's shelters, they get the same. Juvenile Center get the same number, and the Rescue Mission. The notes and letters I've gotten from individuals in the jail, in the Rescue Mission, Juvenile Center, unbelievable.
Right?
One young man sent me one recently from the Rescue Mission. I love reading this paper, and when I get out, I'm going to go to school, take some classes, and I'm going to come and work for this paper.
Oh, wow.
Now, that's unbelievable. I've had some women that's in the women's shelter wanted to meet me personally, tell me their story, how they ended up in the women's shelter. But because they read the paper one day, because they were in a state of depression, they are not going back to the environment that they were in. We have to make a difference. Somehow, we got to reach people. So that's what I'm trying to do. And if you look at it, giving away those free papers cost me about $12,000 a year at the cost of the paper. I do not receive a salary from the paper because I pay my writers and everybody else. I believe in giving back. And I think, again, reading, education, and knowledge is the key.
Amen.
Amen.
John.
Amen.
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 Can I just say one thing real
Yes,
quick,
ma'am.
Clarence?
Go ahead.
When you face all the decisions that you're going to have thrown at you this year, when you think of, we have a former judge from Allen County who's running for the 3rd Congressional District who talks about how she wants to make sure wokeness gets reversed. We have people who are running to serve us in the governor's seat that, come directly out of acting like they can just advance their religion and that they don't need to worry about anybody else's viewpoints and that we're in a war against Christianity. Well, we have a lot of different messages that are going to be thrown at us this year and always are going to be thrown at us. And it's important to remember that if we work within our families, within our neighborhoods, within our people horizontal to us, that's political.
Yes.
Right there.
That's right.
When we do our little bit to build up our neighbor and to reach out to the people who are most hurting, then we know how to make the decisions when we go to the ballot box.
Right. But and also, Mr. Deutsch, and we talk about equity, and it's been said that the southeast side of town does not get a lot of services, or they're delayed in services because we're not a homeowner. We're not homeowners on this side. We don't have the tax base of other places and things like that. But if the taxes go in a pot, why aren't they equally distributed?
Good question. Good question.
For another episode.
That probably is another episode or assignment we should have here. I opened up the Dream Center in March of 2023 just for the fact in the location it is, because we have highest infant mortality rate. Our kids are dying. Those are our brothers and sisters, And we have great healthcare system here. Since I've opened it up, I've had the Parkview Ronald McDonald down there at least 6 times to give out the shots. We also have gone over to Johnny May Farm and done some cooking classes for mothers that are pregnant and mothers just recently had a baby.
Oh, wow.
Now we will be there every quarter. I have a nutritionist that's working with me. We will be there every quarter of this year, starting next month. And we would be doing cooking classes. Right there, they have a commercial kitchen, and in the back room, you can have seating for at least 15 people. Those are some of the things that we're doing, because sometimes you can dig your grave with what you eat. So it's important that a mother that's pregnant, when we did the cooking class as a sample about a month ago, 2 months ago, the number of people that came, and they loved the food that was prepared. And I can tell you one thing, now I'm a good cook too, and I eat healthy. I cut out red meat in 1990, haven't touched it since. So I'm not saying you have to eliminate red meat or whatever, but read all the articles and read everything you see. It would tell you that it does make a difference in the longevity, what you're doing. Over at the Dream Center, we're getting ready to put in a yoga studio.
Wow.
That instead of the people in the 806, they don't have to go all across town or whatever to exercise, to work out. We're going to have a massage therapist in there in a room that also they can come and just sit and meditate, a meditation room. Sometimes people need that.
Amen.
All of these are basic things that we see, but we overlook. We know they exist, but they are not right in the 806 area.
Yes, and
so
we need
those
that.
are some of the things that going to happen, and we're working on to make sure that they do happen.
Right. Mr. Dortch, you mentioned it. Can you tell people where the location is of the Dream Center, and tell them where they can get your newspaper?
The location of the Dream Center is 1615 East Wallace Street. We do have a branch office in the Penta building on Calhoun Street, but our newspapers are in every CVS store here in the city. They're delivered there every other week. Usually now on a Thursday. It used to be on a Friday. So they're in CVS stores and the Sunoco gas station on Oxford Street. They're right there. A stack that 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever the number is, they sell the week before.
Right.
And I personally am the one that deliver directly to the jail and those other places, because I want to make sure they get it and make sure they understand the people are to get them too.
Amen.
So the newspapers are there, and you can subscribe. It's only $50 a year, mailed to your home every other week.
Okay, that's really important.
That's really important. Mr. Dortch, we thank you. We thank you for joining us, and we thank Audrey for joining us. But before we leave, I want to ask you this, and you can tell the people out there, if there was one thing that you can change in our political process, if you had it in your power, what would be the one thing that you would change?
Are you talking about in the political process? You mean the local one, nationally, state?
However you put it.
Whichever one you think is most important. Mm-hmm.
Well, they all are. State, I'm very, very concerned about the presidential election. Extremely concerned. I do think that, we have panels for everything and all of that. Sometimes I think that should these races be one that you run for them, and that should there be a commission of people with a young person on that commission that you have to go and interview before the commission, and then you are hired to be a mayor or you're hired to be a governor or whatever. I think that's important,
right?
Because just to go vote and the person don't really know, but they should be able to go. We should hire the person. You don't have to run for it. Too much money is spent in someone trying to run for an office.
Amen.
I strongly disagree with that. Plus, it bring about the unfairness because you don't know how they end up getting the money. Money comes in all different shapes and forms and everything. But if you have a commission, it doesn't just have to be one, but there need to be some young people involved in that because we need to hear what they have to say.
True.
And I just have to punctuate that real quick, John, in terms of having just run for office. I announced in September of 2022 that I was running for 2023. So we had almost a year and a half to fundraise, and it still took like literally 8 hours a day to do the work of running for a city council at large race. And when we think about how much money involves the outcome of legislation, right? It's not just the candidates who get to run, it's also the legislation that gets on the agenda for the year. They say right now, in any given time in the United States, only about 20% of our voters actually have impact on what gets on the agenda for a legislative cycle in any given state.
Wow.
And that the working class person, anybody making below $13 an hour, is likely not even represented whatsoever.
That's true.
How true.
That's true. Well, Mr. Dortch, we want to thank you. And this is not your last time come sitting with us. We gained some knowledge and we enjoyed you. So we're going to have you back as many times as we can, as many times as you want. Bring back some knowledge and continue to educate us. But we want to thank again Audrey for joining us and being our coming on to be our co-host. But we're going to thank everybody for watching us. This is Truth in Politics, presented to you by ONV.
And if Clarence, if I can just throw this in real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
If people would like to become a mentor or get involved politically or understand how to do basic things that help you form your civic life, reach out to us here at this channel. Tag us on a Facebook post or personal message the ONV. We are here to begin to create something new in Fort Wayne.
Right.
And we know that what we have isn't going to get us there, right?
That's right.
So please take us up on our offer. You have people here that are going to help.
Yes. And as we always say before we leave our people, always protect your mind.